you live. And today we're going to talk about all the sweet stuff. We're going to be talking about sugar. We're going to be talking about honey, agave nectar, artificial sweeteners. What is the tea with artificial sweeteners, sugar, honey, agave nectar? Get a bunch of questions on these ones all the time. So we want to take a little bit of a little dive, a little swim through that syrupy goodness and see what is up with all these things. So first off, let's start off with probably the most common question is, should I cut out sugar? Should I cut out sugar? Sometimes people ask this for general health reasons or for fat loss reasons. There's good arguments for both. Now, whether or not you decide to cut out sugar depends on a couple of factors. That's very specific to you. Okay, it's not the same answer for everybody. So let's start off with your basic sugar. We're talking about white table sugar. We're talking about powdered sugar. We're talking about sugar cane, anything that comes from the sugar. Whether it says raw sugar or not, I hate to break it to you, you're not really getting any extra health benefit by going raw sugar over regular white sugar. It's just a matter of which one you like better or which is most convenient for you or that gives you the feels. But should you cut it out? Should you do the sugar thing or not? Number one question you got to ask yourself is, how do you feel after you have some sugar? And not just immediately after, because the answer to that one is usually good, right? But how do you feel 24 to 72 hours afterwards? This is why I highly recommend that you do a journal, that you do an elimination diet where you reduce the number of things that you're putting in your body so that as you add things in to kind of test out, is this right for me? You know what's up. Now, some people do absolutely stellar on a fat loss or weight loss meal plan or a general health plan while still eating sugar. Those people in general are not going to have a real high kind of addictive response to sugar. But for some people, they will, okay? You've probably seen documentaries or science behind what goes on in the brain, how sugar is almost like cocaine in the brain and it gets you all amped up. And no, I have not had a bunch of sugar today. This is just me on a Tuesday. So, sugar can affect some people in a really profound way in that it will have almost an addictive quality, okay? If you are consuming lots of sugar right now, if you're drinking sodas, if you're drinking a lot of stuff, eating a lot of stuff with sugar in it, yes, you should absolutely ratchet back just for general health reasons, if nothing else. And then once you've pulled back from sugar, done like a sugar detox, something like that, where you're not doing any additional sugars, then you add the sugar back in and really pay attention to how you feel. Few hours afterwards, 24 hours afterwards, 72 hours afterwards. So this is what I recommend for you, dear listener. If you're wondering, is sugar right for me? Should I include it in my meal plan? So one of the things you need to ask yourself is, how do I feel from it? So to figure this out, to discover this, first take out all of the sugar, all of the artificial sweeteners, all of the added sweeteners of any sort completely for at least a week, minimum 1 week, 7 days, none of any of that stuff, and keep a journal and add back in for one meal or one treat or whatever it is, the sugar, and make a note of how you feel. That's it. If you feel fine, 5, 24, 72 hours afterwards, no ill effects, no crazy weird cravings, because that's another thing that that sugar will often do to a good portion of people. It will make them have crazy weird cravings for even more stuff because your brain lights up with, oh my goodness, you found caloric density, give us more. And some people will not have that reaction. Okay, so first off, for you, this is your test. This is the challenge that I issue to you if you have asked yourself, should I cut out sugar? Number one, do cut it out for 7 days. Number two, methodically add some back in as a treat or in a certain context where you can monitor yourself 24 to 72 hours after the fact and see how you feel. If you've got like indigestion, if you feel jittery, if you have weird cravings, that's a sign that maybe your body and your metabolism doesn't get along with sugar so great. So it's a good sign, a good indicator that you should maybe take it out or eliminate it. The other thing you have to ask yourself is it reasonable for my lifestyle to completely eliminate sugar? Is it reasonable? If it's a matter of, because here's the thing, we all have social food ties, social food bonds. This, right now, during the pandemic, is the perfect time to test out things like whether or not we should have sugar in our diet, because there's much, much less social pressure to have dessert at the friend's house, to have dessert, to go out for ice cream, to do to do all these social things that revolve around food. Now is really the perfect time to test it out, right? Because there's not that additional social pressure. Maybe you have some internal pressure. Maybe birthday doesn't feel like birthday without birthday cake. Maybe you and a gelato once a month, and that is like your special times, your special treat. Now you can swap out the treat, right? You can change what the treat is. But if emotionally, mentally, having that sugar, having that treat, and I'm not talking about just like treating yourself like every time you feel bad, like eat something sweet, but like if once in a while you feel like this is my time for myself and I want to show myself some love with the occasional sugar, is it really a good idea to take that out? It's not a good idea to take it out if we're not replacing it with something. If you do find that after your 7-day sugar detox that you add sugar back in and it's like, whoa, this is not for me, but what am I going to do about, going to birthdays? What am I going to do about when I'm treating myself? Try to think of ways and scenarios in which you can either swap out, like if it's something you're doing for yourself personal, how equally a treat, whether that is like a spa day or, a walk in the park or whatever. Try to deal with social pressure. Oh, come on. It's just one piece. It's just, birthdays are special. It's a special occasion. Oh, come on. Everybody's doing it, whatever it is. Think about how you would deal with that kind of pressure, right? How you would respond to it without making the other person feel bad. And that's really where a lot of this pressure comes from, to eat socially when we get back to like normal life, whenever that happens. A lot of this pressure to eat socially is because we do want to participate. We do want to show love. We do want to show appreciation. And we don't want to reject what somebody is offering to us. So how do we reframe that and be like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. This is so special. I am enjoying everything about this moment together. And then maybe change the subject. Maybe like, tell me a little bit more about you. What's going on with your life right now? That would be a real treat for me, more than the cake right now. I want to hear it. Tell me how you made this cake. Like, what did you have to go through? What was your process or whatever? And really, because when somebody wants to share that moment with you, they're trying to find a connection with you, right? If we taste the same, have all this social pressure to just stuff my face with things that don't actually make me feel good, right? So that is how I would test and deal with the pressures of sugar. Don't have it hanging around the house. Don't have it like as a staple part of your diet. But there can be made room for sugar in just about any meal plan. If you are doing a meal plan that is, if it fits your macros, obviously there's room in there for sugar or alcohol or anything else. Depending on how you manipulate other meals with your protein, fat, and carbohydrate, all that kind of stuff. Many meal plans allow for a one-day off plan or a cheat day, as it were. Those kinds of plans, you can work it in. So there's a lot of different contexts in which you can work sugar into a fat loss meal plan, a general health plan, that kind of thing. But it is a matter of what is right for you. Not what is right for anybody else, but what is right for you. So keep that in mind. There is no one size fits all when it comes to nutrition. I would love to be able to tell you that there's like a perfect formula for everybody. There is not. We all have different little ecosystems, different environments happening inside our body. And we can change our ecosystem, our microbiome, to a degree. In other words, if you are a person who's been eating lots of sugar consistently for a long time, you will likely have sugar withdrawals, in part because all of that microbiome, all that ecosystem is somewhat dependent on you putting that sugar in your body. And some of those microorganisms are going to die off and new ones are going to flourish. And it's like this ever-changing and growing environment, like a forest inside your body, which is super cool. But it does, they have found that these microorganisms do communicate with the brain via the vagus nerve and different ways to communicate with the brain. So the microbiome will put pressure on you when you make changes, which is part of the reason why we often will feel bad initially when we make real sudden changes to how we're eating. Even if those changes are overall positive, a lot of times when we make sudden changes, that's part of the problem. All right, so that's having to do with sugar. I've gotten questions on honey, agave nectar, maple syrup, dates, sugar cane. Like, okay, so let's talk about kind of all of these as a group. So there's sugar, are all the same. I hate to break it to you. Agave nectar sounds wonderful and gentle. It's the same. They use a different plant and the same processes they use to make corn syrup. So sugar and corn syrup and agave nectar and maple syrup and honey, all of these things, yes, even honey, all of these things, no matter how natural they are, they really kind of do the same things to the body. They have roughly the same caloric value, caloric density. They have roughly the same impact on the brain, on our satiety, on our hunger, how we perceive our food, all these different kinds of things. So, and in fact, one of the things that can happen if we let's say we do a lot of sugar and we're like, oh, well, I'm going to do something better for my health. I'm going to switch from all sugar to I'm only going to do raw sugar, or I'm only going to do honey or agave nectar, or one of these more natural, or things that we perceive as being more natural. What happens then is if we are having a treat, maybe it's a treat that we used to make with sugar, but this one's made with honey. And we have run into the problem of perhaps stimulating a ghrelin response. In other words, how we think about our food can impact us on a hormonal level with how hungry we are. So ghrelin is responsible for making you want to seek out and get more food. If we believe that our food is healthy or not a treat or not indulgent, we will be more hungry afterwards. We just will. So if you swapped out your favorite cookie recipe with dates instead of sugar, and you feel even the least little bit deprived because it's dates now instead of sugar, you will likely eat more, which is going to be counterproductive to any fat loss goals that you have, or if you're trying to work with diabetes or other things to reduce those. Be cautious about switching from just plain old sugar to something that you perceive as healthier or natural. If you love the flavor of the other thing and it feels more indulgent to you, do it, right? I love pure maple syrup. It is delicious. It is delicious, right? I am not going to be under any illusions that the pure maple syrup is any different as far as like when it gets into my system as sugar syrup. It really just isn't. It really just isn't. But the flavor is nice. I like the flavor. It does seem indulgent to me. And it's certainly more expensive, so it makes it feel like a real treat, which is in turn going to make it seem like, okay, I am treating myself. I am enjoying this, right? So you did hear me mention briefly dates. That's another thing when it comes to like health foods, health bars, that kind of stuff, any kind of a bar thing. A lot of times they'll put condensed or reduced fruits or dates or any kind of sugar syrup. Doesn't matter if it's coming from fruit sugars or not. It is going to have roughly the same effect on your body as sugar. So it's really, it's a sneaky, I don't want to call it sneaky way, it's kind of sneaky. It's a little bit sneaky way to make a candy bar look like a health bar, which gives us the perception that we're doing so much better for ourselves when it's really not that much different. Now, dates do have fiber in them, so win on the fiber, but otherwise, they're sugar. They're sugar, y'all. So in my opinion, for most people, if you are going to treat yourself with something like any kind of caloric sweetener, make sure it's the one that you like the best. Just make sure it's the one that's the biggest treat for you. You're really splitting hairs by trying to decide, like, oh, should I have corn syrup or maple syrup or agave syrup? It's all the same pretty much once it gets in you. So it's a matter of, like, what is your taste? What is going to be, like, the most indulgent for you? Really appreciate that moment with your sweetened food or beverage or whatever it is, and then leave it aside. Okay, so that is for sugar and caloric sweeteners, or sweeteners that have calories. What about non-caloric sweeteners or low-calorie sweeteners? Things like stevia, Splenda, Equal, agave nectar. Okay, there's a lot to choose from on the market right now. Stevia definitely gets the reputation for being the most natural, and it kind of is. A lot of the other ones, like Equal and what's the escaping my mind. Some of these are literally results of making them in a lab, right? And stevia does come from a leaf. They are all going to have at least one thing in common. They are going to have a sweet taste, but not a lot of calories. Some of them have a few random calories in there, like the xylitols are lower calorie, not no calorie. The sucralose, which is sugar based but far less calories, it's got like trace amounts of calories. All of them are going to have low or no calories but a sweet taste. The problem that we can run into with non-caloric sweeteners is that we will still have a hormonal reaction to the flavor. Remember, your body is more than just garbage in, garbage out. It is also how we perceive our food. It is also how we taste and smell our food. All of these things are factors and will affect us on a hormonal level. We already talked a little bit about ghrelin and how that can have an impact. Also, when we taste something sweet, we get an insulin response, which is good. You want an insulin response. Insulin is your friend. If you take in sugar, take in calories, and you don't have an insulin response, then you're in trouble. That's when we're talking about diabetes. So insulin's job as a hormone, its basic job, is to pull sugars out of the bloodstream, because if they stay in the blood, they're toxic, right? If they stay in the blood, your blood turns into syrup. And if that happens, then that blood, that thick syrupy blood, cannot pump through the fine little capillaries in your eyes and in your extremities, which is why diabetics will sometimes lose vision, feet, extremities, okay? So very serious thing to not have insulin doing the job. So insulin pulls the sugar out of the bloodstream, where if it remained, it would become a problem, and it puts it where it can be used as usable energy. It can put it in the liver, it can put it in the muscle tissue, it can put it in the fat cells, okay? So your body does all kinds of fun little tricks to get it to someplace where it can be. So if you have enough storage in your liver left over, you can put it in your liver. If you have enough muscle mass, you can have some extra storage there, which is why I'm a big fan of increasing your muscle mass. You get a little bit extra storage for your sugars, which is super fun. But anything beyond that goes into the fat cells. Now, because insulin is a storage hormone, its whole job is to put things where it needs to go, and it's super important. If you taste something sweet, your body says, okay, insulin, sugar incoming. We just tasted sweet. That is the alarm bell for sugar incoming. So insulin is released. It's ready to catch those sugars and put them where they need to go, but nothing happens. So let's say you had a non-caloric sweetener. The insulin's out there ready to, grab those sugar molecules, but nothing happens. So while insulin is in the bloodstream, is in the body, ready to do its job, it will not allow the fat in the fat cells to be released. So, if we have a non-caloric sweetener, it is my recommendation as your nutrition coach, you have that non-caloric sweetener with actual calories so that the insulin response is appropriate, so that your insulin is actually doing something. If you have, for example, a few hours where you haven't eaten and then you decide, okay, well, I'm just going to have a diet soda and then I'm going to go a little bit longer, having that diet soda will effectively stop your body from losing fat for about 2 hours. Okay? For about 2 hours. That's about how long insulin's going to hang out, wait for something to happen. So it's better from a nutritional standpoint to have that diet soda with your meal. Because if you have it with your meal, then insulin's got something to do, and you're gonna have some insulin response no matter what you eat. So it's an appropriate reaction, and you're not going to block the use of body fat on those in-between times. Even if you are a person who is not trying to lose fat, it's still not ideal for the use of your stored body fat to be blocked, because we do want to stay energetic. And if we get too low energy, like if I'm saying, oh, well, I'm gonna not eat and I'm just gonna have a diet soda to power through or whatever, I'm going to get more and more and more tired, no matter how much caffeine that diet soda had in it, because I don't actually have any calories. Remember, calorie is just a unit of energy. That's all it is. So we don't want to block the flow of energy, right? So having a diet soda can literally block the flow of energy unless you're having it at a time with other calories where it's appropriate. Now, as far as what kind of non-caloric sweetener is best, again, very personal decision. And I highly recommend, again, just like we did with the sugar, is to do a journal. Take all the non-caloric sweeteners out for a little bit and then try adding them back in, and then journal how you feel afterwards. Aspartame is one of the ones that I know a lot of people have a headache reaction to for some reason. I don't. I feel fine after having aspartame. Sucralose tastes the best to me, so that's the one I usually use when I do a non-caloric sweetener. Stevia, it's all natural. I don't hear people talking about headaches or any negative reactions to stevia. But for me personally, I don't like the taste of it. It tastes like licorice or something. I don't know. It's just weird. So it doesn't feel like a treat to me, so I'm not going to use it. If I am going to use a non-caloric sweetener, it is going to be in something that is a real treat, like a nice sugar-free Jell-O or sugar-free soda, or putting some on my yogurt with some berries, that kind of thing. So when you're selecting your non-caloric sweetener, number one, you want to make sure that you're not going to have some kind of adverse reaction to it, even if it's mild and kind of in the background, which is, again, why I highly recommend journaling and kind of figuring out which ones you're going to have a good reaction to, bad reaction to. But when it comes down to it, sugars, syrups, agave nectars, corn syrup, maple syrup, raw sugar, brown sugar, white sugar, any of these are going to be roughly the same in the body. So pick the one that you really like, that you really enjoy. Have it in the right context, and maybe find out if you are having any weird little subtle reactions to those sugars that you were not previously aware of. Do a 7-day no sugar challenge for yourself and then add them back systematically. Same thing with your non-caloric sweeteners. Okay, I hope that you found that useful. Stay sweet, everyone, and I'll see you next time.